Understanding why talk therapy doesn't work very well is important in the quantum embodiment model. Talk therapy is a wonderful thing for people who don't have someone to discuss things with, to really be able to get things out from inside them. And there are definitely some benefits to it. It can really help a person to be able to look at things differently. However, just talking about something doesn't allow you to go deep inside to get to the underlying roots. And it's when you get to the underlying roots that you can actually pull what is the cause of that issue so it doesn't happen again. Consider it this way. You can go into a garden that's filled with weeds and mow the garden, and when you're finished mowing, it will look beautiful for a few days until the weeds start to grow back, and now you're back to the same situation again. The same thing is with just talking about something and not looking deep inside to find the underlying roots that are holding that issue in place, causing it to repeat over and over again. And that means getting on your hands and knees and reaching into the weed and pulling it up by its roots so that it doesn't sprout again. And that means moving into the unconscious mind body, to things that are below your level of conscious awareness. And this could be seen in this example I'll share with you on Trudy. When Trudy came to me, she had excess weight, high blood pressure, a family history of lots of emotional baggage, and wasn't realizing what it is that she wanted to in her life. She felt depressed, she felt the inability to maintain her attention, and she was really, despite being in a very successful job, was unhappy, was not living life with enjoyment, and using many strategies to numb herself and disassociate with too much drinking, too much television, and just too much getting involved in insignificant things to avoid really facing what was happening with her. As Trudy and I sat down and she explained what was going on, I immediately began to move her back in time to understand the foundation that she was established in of why she wasn't able to find the happiness despite being very intelligent and doing very well at work. She couldn't make it in her personal life. And what we found is that she grew up with a household of drama. Her siblings were fighting. Her family, her mother and father, were always at each other's throats, yelling and screaming. And her memories from childhood, although there were many pleasant ones, were filled with constriction. I watched her body become agitated and stiffen as she talked about many of the trials and tribulations that she went through growing up. She made it very clear that she had done her best over the last 12 years to help herself. But she never went deep inside. So after 12 years of talk therapy, it changed little what was going on in her life, as the roots of the issues remained hidden. A rule of therapy is always this: you are never upset for the reason you think. Trudy went through her life, but then suddenly died of a heart attack before we had the chance to go beneath the surface. We had the whole perspective, as she shared in just 2 sessions with me, of what we needed to do and where we needed to go. But she got caught up in her life, got too busy with what's happening, and she ended up dying 8 years too soon. The stress, the anger, the repressed emotions from her past caused her this imbalance, this sickness that showed up as heart disease, high blood pressure, hypertension, many other names. But I'll tell you, there's only one name you need to understand. She hadn't looked inside and purified her past to bring it to a state of peace, to a state of homeostasis, where she can gently smile on all the learning experiences she had and not caught up in the pain and the suffering. Talk therapy doesn't pull out the roots. And very often, the more you talk about it, the more you build reinforcements to whatever the difficulties you had in the past. And it puts you in a state of shame or blame or regret. These are not empowered emotional states, and they cause illness. And when we begin to understand what is happening biologically, which we will be talking about in detail in other modules, you understand that any time something has upset you that caused resentment, anger, fear, if you don't look within and find the roots and find a way to remove it, to forgive it, to bring yourself to a state of reconciliation, and at least to feel neutral, that you're making yourself sick, you're shortening your life, and creating lots of suffering, not only for you, but for everyone around you who's going to be experiencing whatever you share with them. The Quantum Embodiment method is summed up here. The roots of whatever your issues are buried in the unconscious mind-body. The aches, the pains, the weaknesses, the stiffness, the rigidity, whatever is going on physically has a mental and emotional history that needs to be looked at, examined, and purified. It is not just a little this or a little that from old age or from working out too much. It's a message from the depths of your being, asking you to pay attention and do something different, so you can find freedom and open up the circulation so that your body can naturally become healthy. This basic maxim really shares the approach. You can't change what you don't know about. And if you just keep talking of your conscious recollections, it doesn't take you deeper inside to the subconscious and unconscious memories that have been buried, that have been coated with pain and suffering, that says, avoid, don't look at me, don't ever come back here again because it's too painful. I'm past it now and I never want to remember that again. And it's that very defense mechanism, that very barrier, wall that we've put up that says, be afraid to look within and re-examine those painful moments in your life, that really should be saying, anytime you feel the need to avoid something, stop, step back, and understand it's essential to look at it with a new vision to bring peace to that which wasn't. Because the bottom line is this: whatever happened in the past is over. You survived it. You got past it. Why are you still carrying around the fear of what you already went past. Because if that's being held inside as a constriction, that could be the cause of your cancer, of your heart disease, of your diabetes, of any type of imbalance in your endocrine system, because that part of your unconscious mind body is still holding on to the grievance, the anger, the sadness, the fear, even though it's over. This is the healing process. The Chinese look at illness as an interference with circulation. Circulation of the different chemicals in the bodies, all of the hormones, the neurotransmitters, everything that the body has in all its systems, whenever it's interfered with, it begins to create backup, like in the sewer, like in your toilet, like in your sink, the backup, and then it overflows and creates a mess everywhere. Same thing with mental and emotional issues. If you're not willing to look at it and gently smile and say, yes, that was a very challenging moment in my life, and there was some suffering I went through because I was not willing to do something different. I was stuck and attached to an issue, and I wasn't willing to let go. I got caught up in my wishes and expectations, and I wanted them so much, I demanded that everything coordinate itself to give me that, even though it wasn't reasonable. So I suffered and made those around me suffer. We have to look gently. We have to examine. We have to pull the roots. This is the healing process. Like a bank account, anger deposits made through life that aren't withdrawn become rage that erupts into symptoms to distract and prevent emotional explosion. What we avoid, what we deny, what we repress inside, what we're unwilling to look at, to talk about, to remember. These are the elements that constrict our system and make us sick. And like gunpowder, they build up inside until something in the present triggers them. The present time stressor, the present time uncomfortable situation, the present time interaction of conflict lights the fuse. And then the gunpowder from the past that is stuck inside the body, inside our emotions, inside our unconscious mind, build up until one day we explode. Now, many people use different coping strategies. They use coping strategies of drinking or drugs to numb themselves and disassociate, so the gunpowder in the body and the body itself isn't even felt. They live in their head and their thinking, and their body has no aliveness, their body has no vitality, their body has no freedom of movement and motility, and they get stiffer and stiffer and really make themselves sick and kill themselves. So we have to understand that in all mental, emotional, and physical illness, there are 3 basic steps that occur in order to bring us to that state of feeling horrible and being diagnosed with some illness, disease, or malady, disorder by some professional. These 3 steps in sequence are predisposition, precipitation, and perpetuation. Predisposition is when we predispose ourselves to making demands, having expectations, developing certain attachments to what we want and insist we have to have, being caught up in our wishes and our dreams, our ideals and pictures of perfection, and then the world doesn't match it. All of a sudden, we don't get what we want. we get into a battle, we get into a conflict, we make decisions to stay somewhere, and then we may find ourselves being physically abused, mentally abused, emotionally abused, because we stay in the situation way too long, hoping, praying, please, please, all I want is to have my wish fulfilled. All I want is to have my demands and expectations met. And that is the predisposition. Because instead of being connected to life as it is, accepting it as it is, allowing us to breathe and circulate and move with the flow of what is, our demands and expectations now get shattered. We take it personally and have what we call separation instances. Anytime our wishes, desires, demands, and expectations are not met, we feel threatened. It's not a real physical survival threat, but our mind processes it that way. And when the mind processes it that way, we go into that fight or flight response, and we begin to constrict. We begin to repress and hold inside our anger, and we don't have effective ways for releasing this negative emotion. And so we hold on to it. We suck it up. We push it inside and pretend and disassociate from our being. We hold on to those traumatic, painful events and don't go back and look at them and release them. Those dramatic losses, and go back and overcome them, forgive them, purify them. And that becomes the nexus. That becomes where the wave and movement of life, the waves become particles, they become solid and literally get deposited in that part of your body where you're holding it. Some people hold it in their neck, in their lower back, they hold it in their gut, in their chest, in their legs. Wherever you hold your stress, that's where the imbalance begins. Where do you hold yours? Take a moment right now. Where do you hold your stress? When you think about stressful moments, do you find it in your neck, tight, weight, in your chest, all of a sudden becoming heavy? Maybe there's a hollowness in your gut, or maybe it's like a knot. Check, because where you hold the issue, where you respond today, lets you know that those same areas have been building and building and building, chronically creating an armoring, creating a protective mechanism, a defense. See, anything you have a defense against, that means it's still stuck inside of you and it's growing. Why? Because you haven't released it, you haven't let it go. And this is why looking deep inside and recognizing, facing and embracing, and being able to trace back where it came from so that you can replace these things. Because if you don't, you then move into the second part, then becomes the precipitation. The precipitation happens when all of a sudden you're in a lower emotional state, there's stress happening in other areas of your life, and you now experience an existing real or imagined threat to your survival. So now it activates all the gunpowder, all of the repressed energies and rage and anger from the past that's buried inside you, and that all comes up. And now, instead of it just being just a little thorn in your side, it becomes a big issue. You start now dreaming about it, ruminating about it, telling stories about it, being completely overwhelmed and overcome about it, because it literally takes you over. And the longer it takes you over, the more ill you become. And now the messages from the body gets more intense. Now, instead of little discomfort here or a little ache and pain here, now all of a sudden you have a heart attack. Now all of a sudden you have diabetes. All of these start with that beginning stage of the constriction that you didn't deal with emotionally, mentally, way back when. And now, the longer you hold on to it, not only does it precipitate the illness, but now it perpetuates it. Because the normal thing that most people do is they then look for a drug to get rid of the pain. Let me get rid of the pain. Let me lower my temperature. Let me do this. Let me do that. We work with the symptoms because we think if we can alleviate the symptoms, that returns health. No, it doesn't return health because the actual cause of the sickness is below the surface in the unconscious mind-body. And the first thing that happens when stress occurs is your immune system shuts down. And when your immune system shuts down, it doesn't have the wherewithal to fight all of these illnesses, so you have predisposed yourself and precipitated what then follows, and continuing, even with your pills, guess what? The threats in your mind, the threats and fears from the past are still there. And so really what you've done is you've disassociated and numbed yourself from the actual underlying causes, and now that part of your brain and your unconscious mind will try and find another way to get your attention by making you sick with something else. So now the aches and pains will move to a different part of the body, hoping that you'll pay attention. Because that's what it's saying. Pay attention. Please, please look within. See what this is really all about. Your old ideas, your old grievances and conflicts. Please, you must forgive them for you. It's making you sick. Making you angry is making you sick. And we've got to look at these. And this is the way that we use quantum embodiment to be able to bring you back to health and wellness.